right, we are now in game 3, Myth World Cup 2007. We are playing Twister Allies Territories. I have never played this map. Probably I always got eliminated in tournaments before it was picked, or maybe I was benched because we're no simple enough units for me to control. Coming into this, the score is 1-1. Using the Myth World Cup scoring system, Name Changers actually has a 1-point lead. So it's 7-6, I believe, heading into this game. First two maps of the match, I think, the biggest difference, Ska was using some really unique strategies. It was obviously there was a lot of planning put into it. Whereas on the Teacock side, it seems, in Peacocks, whatever you want to call them, seems like they were just kind of lining up three ways and reacting, which, managed to work out okay in game 1, though it could have easily gone the other way. Game 2, it did cost them. They didn't react in time, and unfortunately, they weren't able to get it back together. So looking at this game, just quickly, you've got both Name Changer teams on the west flank, and then you've got both Peacock's teams on the east. So what you'll see a lot of times in Allies matchups is one side will run and meet up with the other side. You do that to try to get an advantage or corner or pinch, and isolate one of the other teams. That's a little bit harder to do in these spots. If, for instance, the spots are a little bit more mixed up, you can see both sides converge on, one flank. So here, we'll see what happens. Similar trades, looks like more of an emphasis on souls for Ska's team, by far the most souls. Actually, both Name Changers teams. So Name Changers are clearly putting a big emphasis on Solus when compared to Peacocks. It does look like, ours and Thierry's team is making a move to potentially link up with Paris's team. Name Changers look like they're lining up. Looks like they want to get control of mid with Solus and some spider packs. Meanwhile, from an artillery perspective, Shyster is advancing with his fetch along with Limp, who are getting ready to line up and face up with Zur. So, 3 fetch against 3. Zur is controlling all 3. That can sometimes be an advantage. The ability to focus fire down. If you have a really good fetch player, I think you'd always want them with 3. With Name Changers, you do have the better ability to micro, so you're less likely to get hit by a random lock shot. But again, you do risk losing the larger fight, potentially. So, it looks like the majority of Lud and Donsky's team is facing up north, up against Thierry and Arzik. So, we thought for a minute it looked like Arzik's team was going to run down and meet up, with Paris's team. They ended up not doing that. So right now, this is basically a 1 versus 1, in terms of the two teams. Fast forwarding, not a lot happening. Looks like one person's lost. That's probably a Solus or Spider. You do see now Chickenwire and Thierry are running their forces south. It looks like they are going to merge up here with Paris's team. As a result, this yellow team here should have an advantage. It's basically just ours against them. They don't see them. We're seeing, messages saying just hold. Shyster just called out rush south. So, like we talked about before, this is a little bit more delayed, which is interesting. I hadn't seen that. But now you see that Thierry is showing. Shyster calls out. It's looking like a rush south. So I think at this point, the pressure is really on Lud's team to do something. They need to clean up Arzenek here pretty quick. Or Shyster and Co. are really going to have to play this rush perfectly. With this little melee, I think it's going to be very hard. If we fast forward, some lock shots. So, not doing terribly. Keeping the fetch alive, but the fetcher not really able to output much damage here. He does get off a couple shots onto Thierry there, but it's not enough to turn the fight. So if we slow it down at this point, Actually fairly even percents right now. But it does look like this, at a minimum, all of this artillery is going to die. They might be able to run some of their Mercs and Zerks, or Mercs are really all that's left, and survive them, but otherwise all of that's going to die. Meanwhile, on Ars' side, he is getting rushed. I think this is the right call from Lud, Donsky, and Fire. We do have a white. I think that was a mistake. Accidentally come out of the water. As we expected, if we speed this thing up, the artillery do go down. Not really much to be done there. They do sacrifice most of the melee as well. So from this point on, I mean, it would be really hard for Name Changers to win. If you do this from a combined percent perspective, you've got 89% left for Lud, but you're only looking at 25% left for Ska's team. That's going to be really tough. The combined percentages there is something like 115%. Versus, somewhere in the neighborhood of 140% if you combine the two teams. So almost, not quite double, but a significant lead for sure. Okay, so it did look like Fire there. Probably a mistake. He was coming down to try to reinforce, but at that point, the rush had already happened. The team was already dead. So probably would have liked to see him move mid, just preserve units and stay alive for tagging. As it is, it's just a matter of really how many flags can the Name Changers teams hold on with from this point forward to avoid getting maxed. Because again, back in the days, there were Myth World Cup scoring, meaning that the manner in which you win the game determines how many points you get over your opponent. So basically, closer games don't count as much as games that are a blowout, as for instance. So, that is a mistake there from Thierry. Looks like Thierry just got taken out by a lock shot from Fire. Good shot from Fire, but honestly, you expect your fetch to be able to block that. Percents now are somewhat close, but still, I mean, Ska's down with 20%. Ours is double that, whereas Lud and Paris are pretty close together. So I'm expecting this to, wrap up in Peacock's favor from this point. We see some artillery fighting. Donsky and Thierry, two of the better fetch players, just trading shots back and forth. A good spider flank there. By Chickenwire, actually got one of Donsky's fetch killed, which you don't see every day. Whose team shifting a bit mid right now? I mean, they've got a lot of tags. Paris and Arzik don't have a bunch of tagging groups out there. Ours is smartly sneaking a melee pack into the backfield here. Well, he'll be able to start capturing some of those flags. Paris' team has almost nothing tagging. They've got a couple units, so 4 in total. It's not terrible. They should be able to capture most of these flags simply because Name Changers just doesn't have the units. They're trying to send stuff up, but what that is also doing is making it impossible for them to hold really anywhere. Looks like Donsky did lose his last fetch. Ended up rushing in there just to do as much damage as he could. And from this point on, I mean, the fight here doesn't even matter that much. Like, Fire may lose this lock, but the only thing that matters here are tags. So just fast forwarding. Again, I don't think this fight matters. Name Changers would have to pull off some real magic to even contest this flag. Solus there, not super useful for tagging. So game ends. You've got a total of 8 flags for the Peacock's team. Total of 4 flags for Name Changers. If we translate that using Grimm's magic scoring system, that turns into a 6-2 victory for Peacocks. So with that, we will wrap this up and go look at game 4. Before I do, we'll just call out damage. Pretty good game from Zur. Perfect ratios for Ravikant. Arguably, one of those could be equally impressive. Donsky and Fire really brought most of the damage for name changers. Other team, unfortunately, on the Ska side just got rushed. Not a lot they could do. That was just an unfortunate situation where they weren't backed up.